I'm Michelle Beshin, and I love sharing ideas, especially ideas that celebrate nature, resourcefulness, and doing things yourself. I also love to search out interesting people. Everyday people that are doing up green in their own unique way so that we can throw their naturally good ideas into the mix. I'm on the same journey as all of you, trying to do things that are healthy and vibrant for us and our environment. Be organic is a lifestyle. It's my lifestyle, one that is naturally imperfect yet practically green every step of the way. When it comes to home redo projects, we always wait until we have the proper amount of time and money and maybe a clear-cut vision. But when you do things yourself and you creatively challenge yourself to be resourceful and work with what you already have, there's really no reason to wait, which is exactly what we're gonna do with this kitchen project that I have been dying to tackle. There are a lot of great things that are gonna be going on in this kitchen over upcoming months, like canning and preserving, and we really need to kind of spread out and reconfigure. And there is 5 feet of wasted space behind this wall. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna pull everything out of here, including that wall. We're gonna repurpose most of the things that we take out and build a few new things using other leftover materials to ultimately create a greener, more efficient, and ultimately a more rustic space. We're gonna see if we can tackle some handmade countertops and cabinets, and we're even gonna experiment with possibly creating some sort of a countertop growing center for like herbs and things that'll grow throughout the year right here in the kitchen. And again, we're gonna work with what we have. We're gonna be very resourceful with everything that we take out of here and everything that we put back in, and we're doing it all ourselves. And the first order of march is, of course, to get all of this out of here and then shut off the water and the power, and then we're gonna take that wall out of here.
It's been a long goodbye. It's alright, so stay with me tonight. Alright.
Not bad for a day's work, and we're trying to send as little to the landfill as possible. We have the little bit of drywall that we removed. We're gonna figure out the best way to dispose of that. The wiring and the electrical boxes and the trim work and the 2x4s, all of that is in great shape. So we're gonna rework it and use it in the things that we put back into the space. We're gonna replace the water heater with a tankless water heater, and of course cut these pipes down. And we have a blank canvas, a lot of materials that we already have to work with, and we're gonna figure out the best way to put it all back together. We're taking care of what's overhead and underfoot first, and since we had to reconfigure the lighting, we removed the drywall and then we've replaced it with some reclaimed metal, and these panels are actually off of my parents' garage roof that they removed several years ago. They didn't have any lead paint on them, so we scrubbed them up good and then gave them 2 coats of shellac, and they are perfect for the rustic look that we're going for. And now we're ready to tackle the flooring, and I've been wanting to do this kind of floor forever. Basically, what we're gonna do is install these wooden tiles that are end grain cut, which makes them very, very durable and mimic kind of a cobblestone look. And these 4x6 tiles are actually cut out of some old beams that my dad had, and they're all cut to 3/8 of an inch thick. And we have guesstimated that we needed about 1,500 tiles to fill this space. So we cut down about 9 beams and had a full day of cutting, didn't we?
Oh, it was a full day.
We also rounded over the edges with the router, and that's just personal preference. We didn't want to have any hard edges. And John did several sample boards, which is always a good idea when you're doing a project for the first time, to test out different products and different styles, different types of woods. And what did you kind of figure out was going to be the best method?
Well, this Green Choice adhesive works out the best. So far what I did, it stays nice and rubbery. And then when we're working with these tiles, normally if I'm tiling a floor, because we're the same process, normally I would start the middle and work my way to each end. But with this transition, I wanted to make sure that we got all full tiles in the front.
Not a bunch of little ones up front there.
So what we're going to do is I'm going to work about 5, 6, 7 rows deep here, work all the way across. And there's no real point in trying to make everything a straight line, because these are rough sawn and they're all different
irregular,
sizes.
but that's what makes them cool.
Right,
all the different patterns.
So there's no reason for me to even try to make a straight line, because they're going to go naturally anyway. So we're going to work off our straight line here, work all the way back, and it should look awesome when we get done. Okay,
and then we have to let this, once we have all of this down, we need to let it sit for 2 days?
2 days, let it cure real good. 2 days and we'll come back with our grout mixture, grout in between them. And as you see, we're keeping the joints nice and tight together.
Yeah, you're not using any spacers or any, I mean, we're gonna have natural space because of the irregularity of the tiles, which is what makes it cool.
It has natural spacing in it, and then when we get to the edges, though, we'll leave about a 1/2 inch gap all around the perimeter of the room, so it can at least swell a little bit if it wants to and move. But we should be fine.
All right, we have about 1,479 more to go. And this, my friends, is a cobble wood floor. And once we got all of the tiles laid in place and we let the adhesive cure, we came back in and coated it with a sanding sealer, which is a wax-free shellac. And what that did was seal the tiles before we came in with the grout mixture. And for the grout, we used the leftover sawdust from when we cut down the tiles, and we mixed it 1 part sawdust to 1 part clear shellac. And you're gonna apply the grout just like you would any regular grout using a float. Don't forget also your hands are a great tool too, and you want to work the grout mixture into the cracks and then clean off your tiles as you go with a damp rag with ammonia water. We let the grout set up for a couple of days, and then we came back in and lightly sanded over the top of the floor to smooth things out, remove any excess sawdust particles that we had on there. We vacuumed it carefully, and then we came back in to bring out the natural color of the wood. We brushed on 1 coat of that sanding sealer, and then for our top coats, we came back in with an eco-friendly high-traffic floor coating, and the first coat of that we brushed on. That way we could work it into all of the grout lines. And then we've rolled on 2 additional coats. So it's got a very durable, protective finish. It looks good, it feels good, and it really was a fun process to install, very budget friendly, resourceful. It was just a bit time consuming. And now to protect our hard work, we're gonna cover it up and we're gonna get to work on the other things that need to come into the space. Now we can move on to finishing off the walls and putting the cabinetry back into place. And for the walls, we're facing them out with brick that we had left over from an outdoor project. And I love the look of brick inside because it has a timeless style, goes with anything and everything. It's no maintenance. And these bricks have a lot of character because they were actually reclaimed off of some old buildings that were getting tore down. And I think a lot of people will be surprised that actually installing the bricks is relatively easy.
Actually, it's very simple. The grid system makes it nice. What you do is you just put the grid system, you get it set up level. So now once you get that up, all your grout lines are going to stay relatively straight because the bricks are irregular.
You have something to follow.
You have something to follow, and they actually rest on there too. So what you do is you just take, we use an eco-friendly adhesive, just take it, add it to the brick, and that way you can just take the brick, put it onto the wall, and just match up your grout line as close as you can get, and that's all there is to it.
Work your way up.
Just work your way up. And then when we get all the brick on, I'm going to come back in with a mortar mix and just mortar in the grout lines to get them all mortared in. And then we'll take and put a soy-based sealer over top just to keep the brick from flaking and not having any of the debris off the brick coming down on the floor.
Keeps it clean.
Keeps it nice and clean.
And it really warms up the space.
It's going to look great.
I love the look of brick on the inside. And then for the cabinetry, remember we're working with the old cabinets that were originally in the space, only I am going to distress them and give them a more rustic look. They're solid wood. There's nothing wrong with them. I'm going to make a lot of woodworkers cringe because I'm going to sand the heck out of them and really scuff them up and then come back in with a dark stain application to deepen the color, scuff them up again, and then we're going to reposition them into the space and get them installed. We're doing a couple of different things for the countertops in this space, and one of them is going to be a concrete countertop. So we have Brandon here from Concrete Impressions. He's going to help us walk through the process, and we're doing a poured in place concrete countertop. So first things first, we needed to get the form set up.
On this particular one, we use 3/4 inch melamine, which has a coating that will not let the water penetrate into the wood, or you could use plywood, but you would have to cover it with plastic. The reason for that, it would suck the water out of the concrete, causing it to crack.
Be more brittle. And that's why you'll notice we have tape along the edges here, and that's where you had routed over, so the melamine, the coating was off of it.
Yep.
So we covered that back up.
Yeah, the router serves as a soft edge, so there's not a stress point for a place to crack, and then we covered it with just duct tape to give it the same concept as the melamine.
And the countertop itself is going to be how thick?
The edge it'll look like it's 2 inches thick, but since the melamine is 3/4 of an inch, the middle will actually be 1.25 inches.
Okay. And then we needed to put some reinforcement here to make sure that it stays strong.
Yep, and we use 3/8 rebar mainly to hold our chicken wire off the melamine, because you want the reinforcement in the middle of the concrete.
Okay. And you could use fencing, you could use additional
Yeah,
wiring.
pretty much anything with wire strength. Like this is all, I mean, concrete's gonna bond to that.
Talk about when somebody's doing a concrete countertop, they're the most important like stress points. Do we have to have more reinforcement in certain places?
Yeah, like this is a sink cutout, and then there's narrow amounts of concrete here, and that's a 90 degrees. So a 90 degree creates a stress point there.
Okay.
So we bent a 90 degree piece of rebar to help hold that together.
And then what about the edge? You know, I always say, well, could it break, you know, the leaning on the edges and so forth?
Yeah,
Do we bring it all the way out?
Yeah, we brought it out like within an inch of the actual edge. If you go too far, you take the risk of exposing your reinforcement through the concrete.
And we have, most people, that you can have just a square edge, but you've added this rubber material on the inside because this is what is going to form up the outside, so it has more of a broken edge look.
Yeah, this is more of a rustic look, called like a chiseled slate look, kind of like a broken rock, better terms. And then all this will come off, and all you'll see is the inside of the form.
And then to accommodate for the fixtures and so forth, we've got some PVC and tubing in here. Now, does this stay in place, or are we going to pull that out after the concrete's poured?
Yeah, these will actually stay in place. We took the templates of the faucet and your soap dispenser, and all the decorative parts will cover
up the holes. And we did a lot of taping. It looked like, but you had a great tip. I was curious why you were taping off all the screws on the outside.
Yes, after we pour the concrete, we'll spill some concrete over it. And
it's messy. That's why we have paper everywhere, right?
And the concrete will get in the screws, and it's hard to get them out. So we just put simple tape over it, and then you pull them, and you'll have a nice clean screw to remove your forms.
Okay, that's a great tip. And then again, we're gonna be removing, once the concrete sets up, just the outer edge is what's gonna get removed. All of this is gonna stay in place.
Yes, that's correct.
And then what do people need to be aware of for their cutouts? Of course, we had to accommodate for a sink. We're having a little garden bed down at the end.
Yep, you just want to make sure when you do it that it fits the first time. If you overlook that part, you're going to be fighting it in the end.
It's not like if I have a wood frame in here, I can kind of come back in and shape it once the concrete's in shape. So we got to make sure it's right.
Yeah, a lot harder.
All right, I think at this point, are we ready to pour the mix?
Yep, we got it all ready.
And then there's a couple of different kinds of mix that you can use, right? We're using the very budget-friendly version.
We're using budget-friendly for our concrete, and there's also high professional quality grades of concrete as well.
And then do they have to have a certain do you add anything to that to strengthen it up, or?
Well, we're actually adding about a quart of Portland per bag to make it a little more creamy, to make it a little more user-friendly for a countertop situation.
And then for finishing it up, people have a lot of options when it comes to decorative finishes on their concrete.
Yep, it's pretty much unlimited creativity. You can do integral color, you can do stains.
After the fact,
and we're particularly broadcasting broken wine bottles in the top surface of this countertop, and then coming back and polishing it to expose the glass.
So we probably won't see it once we get it poured, and it's going to just sit there. A few more steps along the way, right?
Yep.
All right, well, I think we're ready to get mixing. I'm ready to see it poured. Is it important for your first pour to work it into all of the cracks and everything?
Yeah, I like to place all the material in the center, then take a trowel and work it to the edges. That way you can control the amount that you're putting in there, and you can also raise the reinforcement as you go.
All right, now we're gonna work out the bubbles, right? Is that what this thing is for?
Yep, it's just a palm sander.
With no sanding paper on it?
Nope, you don't need that. And you can just go around all the edges and like underneath wherever you can.
Okay, so I just kind of rotate this like this?
Yep.
Okay, I think I have it all vibrated. What's next?
Okay, I'm gonna go back over it with a trowel and get it all leveled back out.
Okay. Do we only do one pass with this?
Yeah, that's definitely sufficient
All right.
enough.
Okay, that does a great job. So you're gonna come back in, knock down all the bubbles, keep smoothing it out.
Yep.
And then what about this? There's like puddles of water. Of course, the water's all coming to the top. Is that just gonna level out, or?
Yeah, it's called bleed water. I mean, there's no place for it to go besides up, so all the water that we mixed in the concrete will evaporate out.
So I don't need to go down there and mop it up or anything. Just let it go.
Just let it go.
All right, cool. And then we're gonna come back in at what point with the glass?
It needs to be just stiff enough where the glass will stay in the top surface.
Okay.
We'll trowel.
So about an hour or so?
Yeah, probably hour to 2 hours.
All right, I'll crush up the bottles and then we'll stick them in there.
Sounds good.
Okay, have a big bowl of glass here. Are we ready to put it in?
Yep.
All right, is there a special way do we just sprinkle it around, or?
No, it's pretty much no scientific way. We can just put it in wherever you feel like you like it. We can strategically place them flat, or we can stand some up and press them in the concrete
Okay.
like that.
We don't really want a design or a pattern or anything. We just kind of want to get as much green in there as possible. And does it matter, because these are from bottles, so they're kind of rounded. Does it matter what direction the rounded part is in there? It doesn't really, because you're just going to come back and polish that down,
it really
right?
doesn't matter. Yeah, we'll just broadcast them all over the entire countertop,
Okay.
and then we'll trowel them in smooth. And you won't even see the glass when we get done. Then we have to let everything cure out, and we'll come back and polish it.
All right, well, we got a lot of ground to cover, so you want to dig in and
Yeah.
sprinkle them around? Don't cut yourself. Well, it's been a long few days because I'm dying to see what this looks like. Why don't you kind of share what we have left to do on this?
All right, we're ready to remove all the forms, and then we're gonna wet polish, grind it, it's called. It will expose the glass that we embedded in our concrete countertop, going from a coarse grit from 50 grit clear up to 3000 grit. Just like you're sanding wood, the finer the grit, the more smooth it's gonna be.
And this has water being fed to it.
Yeah, it applies water. It prevents dust within your house and the longevity of your polishing pads.
It's a bit messy when you do it inside,
Yeah,
on site like this, so we're kind of we're protected.
Yeah.
All right. About how much time do we have to spend on each of the grits? I would imagine maybe a little bit more on the first round, or?
Well, you kind of go until, with the finer grits, you go till like the water gets kind of clarity to it. Instead of a lot of slurry in it, I guess I should say.
Well, that's easy enough. And then once we get this all polished up, will we be able to seal it right away, or will we have to wait a little? Because we're about a week. We've let this cure for a week now before you came back and polished it. So how much longer before we can seal it?
Yeah, you need to get all the surface has to be completely dry to apply your sealer, and then
So
it's
just
ready.
basically let the water that's coming from your polishing process dry.
Yep, pretty
and
much.
then we can seal it out. All right, sounds good. Well, let's get to it. To finish off this countertop, we applied a green penetrating sealer and then went over the top of that with a couple of coats of beeswax, and that's left us with a really nice, shiny, smooth surface. I love the green glass in there, and this countertop turned out even better than we anticipated, so much so that we switched gears on what we were originally going to do for the island. We were originally going to do a butcher block style surface using scrap lumber, but instead we did the same concrete process. The only difference is we're going to do a different finish on this one and experiment with another type of green sealer that is more of a top coat as opposed to the penetrating sealer. And you can see we allowed for some cutouts in here, just like we did with the other one. We're gonna have a built-in cutting board where we are gonna be able to execute the butcher block style. The one appliance that we did replace was the stove, so we've left space for the stove top, and then we have a little prep sink here. Now for the base of the island, we were able to reuse a lot of the original cabinets that were in here for this one full side, and then to get to the width that we needed, we just custom built a piece for this half using salvaged lumber, and that's gonna give us some nice open shelving and additional storage. And any of the pieces that we've had to custom build for the space, we used all salvaged lumber, worked with what we had, and this built-in cabinet back here is really a good example of working with what you have and reusing a lot of things.
Yeah, this is actually pretty cool because we used everything was left over that we used on this. Old trim work that we used, more tin from the ceiling, and that we just rabbited in.
Now a lot of people think doors are kind of tricky to build, but you kind of did it. It's a pretty simple.
Well, it's really basic. I just use a pocket hole jig and then just secure them that way instead of gluing them all up and doing that. And then we just use rabbit bit to inlay the tin. So we used that over. This was old shelving that we took out of a basement of a house that was getting demoed. So we took that, just planed it down, and made a butcher block top out of it, and is all reclaimed lumber.
And the cool thing is, a lot of people, if you don't like the look of the peeled paint like we do, you can also, remove the paint, run it through the planer, and actually work with a piece of lumber that looks like it's new.
Yeah, because that's what this used to look like this, but we had to clean it all up in order to glue it together. So, yep definitely.
And all the old hardware, and we'll eventually put some knobs and things on here, but it's kind of fun to see what you can come up with by just looking around and seeing what you have to work with.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Well, I need to get sealing this island, and then next time we get to have the fun of putting it all back together and finishing the kitchen off. You would normally lay tile from the center. And when you have irregular tiles, you really need to go from side to side because then you're able to get it worked out as you get to each end.
Yeah, you can't make it square. I mean, you can't make it straight, so you just gotta let it go.
Because John, he kept going, whoop. When you keep starting from that same spot and going up, you're gonna keep ending up in the same place. Whereas if you just kind of keep going back and forth when you're working with irregular, that's a big tip for people that they all are a little bit different, but just work your way from side to side. That way you have the ability to work it back out and you stay as even as you can with all of them. We still, even going through the process ourselves, had to figure out some things as we went along and change, like when we were starting to put the grout down, and we realized a lot of it was getting absorbed into the blocks.
Top of the tile.
So we needed to seal it first. So we got a little ways into it and then realized this is gonna work better if we put some sanding sealer on here first, then put the grout in, and it was a lot easier to clean up, and the grout went further and in smoothly.
You need to clean up as you go. Don't get too far ahead of yourselves. That way we started getting a little bit farther ahead of ourselves, and then cleaned up off the grout off the tiles, made it a little bit more difficult, but it still came up easy. But
yeah.
Move on. Stay awake for me a while, my love. It'll all make sense when stuff.
When you're redoing a room like a kitchen and trying to decide where you want to position things, a good little tip is to actually tape off where you want things on the floor. That way you can get a good feel for the layout as well as how much walking room you're gonna have, and it's a lot easier to move the tape around than the actual cabinets or appliances.
Like what you see and want to know more? Go to beorganic.net and be part of our growing online community. We're well stocked with projects from the show and more. Lounge around and check out our growing library of down and dirty and 30 video tips and our Be Organic blog for natural ideas that are always fresh but never artificial.
the cover-ups for the appliances it's the same thing. You're just building a box around now you're just building around a tangible object. Where before it was, don't use that, it's not a tangible object.
Tangible object. And it has a timeless style, it's low maintenance, and these bricks have a lot of character to them. That's your cue.